Okay. Endless is my vow, under the azure sky, boundless autumn. This is a haiku from Soen Roshi, who is in our lineage, which expresses this. Endless is my vow, and he has a wonderful book about his life in the Dharma, which I recommend reading. It's lovely. It's to be found in our library, I believe. We have a copy or two of it. We don't make up our vow. It doesn't come out of thin air. We come into it when we raise the Bodhi mind. It's part of our inheritance. When it first occurs to us that it's possible to live according to a big vow, this is when we come into our inheritance of the vow. It's when we inherit the vow, which has always been there. And if we look back on our life, we can see we've been rolled into it even as we've gone, because here we are, we arrive at the place of Dharma, the awakening to Dharma. The Dharma, incomparably profound and minutely subtle, is rarely encountered. It is rarely encountered. All of the factors that have to come together for any of us to come to this vow are vast and countless. So as we live from vow, we come into our full inheritance as a mature, wise, and caring human being. As we live from vow, we're also nourishing the vow for those who come after us. It's truly a continuous enactment that fuels our awareness. It fuels continuous awareness, remembering, recollection, bringing the broadest insight forward into how we live, and then passing it along. And in this way, to our vow to fully awaken is beginningless. It's without a beginning and without an end. It's a beginningless vow. It's kind of like when you come across Dharma for the first time, there's a feeling of recognition of something familiar, of something so true that we already know. That's just, it's just echoing what we already know. Chosen Roshi, who wrote a book on vows, that's titled The Vow-Powered Life, and is a wonderful sample of her way of Dharma, of teaching Dharma. She calls vows packets of energy, packets of energy. So we can all ask ourselves, what do I do with my packet of energy each day? How will I digest it? I think of, some of the, what is that, emergency, those little packets that you pour into water. How do I digest it? How do I embody it? How will I bring its blessings into the world? So here's a portion of a poem by Mary Oliver. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I have been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? It's so Mary Oliver. It's just so straightforward and so lovely and true. It's so important to ask ourselves that. One of the things that we chant is the chant of boundless compassion, which is a vow really. It's an evocation. And as we do this, we take it directly into our body and our heart and our mind. So any of you who know it, perhaps you want to chant it along with me. Mary Lee, you don't have it immediately available to post, do you?
No, I don't have it immediately available.
Okay.
If you want to
So,
wait like a couple minutes, I might be able to dig it up.
well,
But
if you know it, so I'll just recite it. Absorbing world sounds awakens a Buddha right here. This Buddha, the source of compassion. This Buddha receives only compassion. Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, just compassion. Thus, the pure heart always rejoices. I skipped over an important word. Thus, the pure heart always rejoices. In the light, recall this. In the dark, recall this. Moment after moment, the true heart arises. Time after time, there is nothing but this. Isn't that beautiful? That's so beautiful. So we remind ourselves, we are reminded of such something that's so essential by this thing of beauty, this passage, this beautiful passage. The chant of boundless compassion, which is also known, we chant that one week and we chant it in Sino-Japanese the next time, and that is the Enmei Juku Kannon Gyo. Same thing. It translates as endless dimensions in so many phrases, Kannon Sutra. That's the translation of Enmei Juku Kannon Gyo. Endless dimension in so many phrases, Kannon Sutra. Endless dimension, chant of boundless compassion, boundless, also has the meaning of endless dimensions in this particular moment, not just going forward in time, going forward or going back, but in this very moment is endless in all the many directions of space and filling vast, open, timeless life, every moment, each moment. If there is no beginning and no end, then this moment has, as Dogen says, its own past and future. Each moment has its own past and future. We tend to think of this moment as one speck of time, one fleeting moment of time, but we can also understand this moment as extending out into all time and all space. I mean, this is one thing, I just want to add that this is one thing that is so unique to this particular spiritual path as we talk about these things and we bring them up in our awareness. All of time, all of space, it just, we bust right out of the constriction of the immediate circumstances and just bring awareness of the edgelessness and the boundlessness of the universe into our moment. When we talk about no birth and no death in the Heart Sutra, we're referring to this endless dimension of our life in vow. So the vow, the Bodhisattva vow, is our source, is our source into the boundless. When we call on our own compassion and make it our primary intention, then we put compassion out into the world. When we do this continually, we're riding the wave of compassion, animated by love, and our packet of energy is our offering in the world. It's up to us what our packet brings forward into the world. But how easy it is to be distracted and forget. We fall back into habits of suffering and habits of dissatisfaction. Without the support of a deep vow, we fall more often under the spell of the collective narratives and immediate anxieties that are held in our society at the moment. Chanting the sutras and the gathas fortifies us to put into practice what we most fundamentally value, to put into practice what our most fundamental intention is. And as we chant, we breathe life into it. This is what vow is all about and how it functions. We breathe life into our life. And it's so much the function of chanting. That's why we're doing everything we can to bring more chanting back into the service, which is a central part of daily practice in most Zen centers, in person. We're kind of limited because of the Zoom technology. Years ago, I studied acting. And one of the questions that we asked in preparing the role that we were going to play is, what is the underlying intention of this character? That was one of the first times that I made that kind of connection in my own life. What is my underlying intention? What is your underlying intention? Ordinarily, what we have is various karmic voices that place their demands on our packet of energy. To be successful, to be responsible, to keep our heads down can be one voice. Another could be, I need to be the smartest kid in the class to make my parents proud, or to make sure we are never alone can be another voice, or make sure that we never get embarrassed can be another voice. These voices lead us around in the unfolding circumstances of our life and really constrict our energies, the way we respond to the world, because we have to always meet the requirement of that voice. When we take refuge in a life of vow, though, and in cultivating a life powered by vow, we're challenged to one, really wake up to these voices, to notice them, which all of us I know here have been working hard to do. The voice of vow opens us up to a much greater universe of possibility, of functioning, of being much more, of having our life become much more, on the one hand, much more complex, and on the other hand, much simpler. All embracing whatever is. Not having to make something that is not be. So do you know what animates your life? What vows animate your life? Anybody who's receiving precepts has been working actively with this. Maybe everybody here is working with that or is considering it. What is most essential to you? And how does the practice of Zen help you to live according to what is most essential? We're always asking that. How do I live into this? No matter what age you are, what age any of us are, we can always begin to look at every aspect of our life in light of the vow, in the light of vow. This is really the work that we're all doing as practitioners. Down to the littlest details. How do I do my chores? How do I answer the telephone? How do I wait on a line to be served? How do I respond to a neighbor or a stranger in need? How do I comment to others on current events? How do I relate to the environment? And what products do I buy? And how do I dispose of them? How do I manage my emotions and the emotional storms and reactivity? There's nothing outside of the light of Val. It covers the whole gamut of what makes up our life. It's often not, we often can't perfectly uphold our vows. I mean, maybe more often than not, we can't uphold our vows, but we can return to them again and again. Return to remembering them and to learn from the gaps. Notice when the gaps occur. Whenever we suffer or feel regret or anxious or act out or regress, that's the ideal moment to look at, what was I not paying attention to there? How did that come up? Not with judgment, but with curiosity, because this is exactly our life. All the details. This is what makes it up. So an example of this might be that if you're quick to anger, you think, well, how did I get so swept up? Well, are you hungry? Are you tired? Or maybe you haven't been honest sharing some kind of need that you have, or maybe you haven't placed a boundary on someone else's demands of you. So we come to know, when there's a gap, we come to know, what is it that caused us to forget, that we need to pay attention to. It's all instructive. So when we get into the nitty gritty, we can see how the Bodhisattva vow, though it sounds really grand, the Bodhisattva vow, it's actually quite, quite practical and very specific. It's a vow to stay grounded and practical and honest and real in how we approach our relationships, how we approach our activities, and how well are we practicing self-compassion as well as our compassion for others. So what does all this lead to? Whenever our vow and our values and our actions line up, we come into a deep sense of fulfillment and peace. I know that all of you have had this experience or know the possibility. So there are two aspects to the Bodhisattva vow. One is the vow to become awakened for our own happiness and well-being. And the other is to help all beings become awakened. There's always these two that are folded into this vow, because none of us actually, because of the interdependent nature of all of our life, none of us can be happy if the environment is really screwed up. I mean, look at what's going on now. It's as long as our attention is on our immediate blessings, we can have moments of peace. As soon as we turn on the news or we step outside, we confront the overall distress level. So we look at, because this is the only thing we can do, how much our behavior, my behavior, your behavior affects others' states of mind. If we can transform unsettled energies that we receive from others by developing a settled heart mind in ourselves, we can relieve, if only just briefly and immediately, a bit of the mountains of unsettled energies in the world around us. On the other hand, if we're filled with rancor, we likewise inflame this in others. If we're patient and understanding, we sow the seeds for this in others. It can be an incredible gift when somebody's very distressed to just listen, not try to do anything, but just be there, be with. And we often don't know the effects of our behavior. Though sometimes they're immediately obvious, not all the time. And we practice in Sangha, living into these vows. We can appreciate a harmony in a Sangha and strive to bring some of that same harmony into any of the groups that we are part of by practicing precepts. So the Dharma practices that are extolled in the chanting service help us to cultivate enough awareness of what we're doing to support our ability to choose what we do with our body and our speech, and even what thoughts we cultivate and what thoughts we don't encourage. When we can choose and we know what our intentions are, we can respond wisely and with caring. Vow helps us respond rather than react. What a wonderful gift and what wonderful freedom to be able to respond with our wholeness, from our wholeness, instead of being entirely caught up by preferences and antipathies. We have the choice to live according to vow by raising Bodhi mind. We vow to awake, to be aware, and caring towards all of life for the sake of all of life. So Katagiri Roshi wrote some of these lines: from my human eyes, I feel it's really impossible to become a Buddha. But this I, regarding what the Buddha does, vows to practice, to aspire, to be resolute, and tells me, yes, I will. Just practice right here now and achieve continuity endlessly forever. This is living in vow. Herein is one's peaceful life found. So may we all really appreciate the opportunity we have to chant together and to live according to vow, as we understand more and more fully what that means in our own lives.